An update to the continuing saga over a Civil War gold dig in Elk County after a father-son duo sued the FBI over their 2018 search at Dent's Run.
Breaking news just hit the wire, and it is a total game changer. The FBI and DEA just exposed a cartel operation worth $47 billion inside an ancient mine.
Nobody expected this to happen, but agents just walked into a treasure room that belongs in a history book.
The FBI did its own investigation, and they used a device called a gravimeter, which is one of the most sophisticated methods of exploring what lies beneath the surface of the Earth.
There are still many rumors in the air about who was actually running the show. See, the crazy part is that this mountain has already produced billions. Yet agents just found another massive stash hidden deep in the rock. This find is about to rewrite everything we know about underground wealth. Agents uncover $47 billion secret. The FBI and DEA just pulled off a raid that people will be talking about for decades. They moved into a remote mountain range in South America to take down what appeared to be a standard cartel outpost. But what they found was much more valuable. Deep inside the earth, buried under layers of ancient volcanic rock, was a silver cache estimated to be worth $47 billion. This wasn't just a pile of coins or bars. It was a massive working mining operation that had been extracting raw silver ore and processing it in secret. The mountain they raided is known as Cerro Rico, or Rich Hill, and it has a reputation for being the most metal-rich peak on the entire planet. For years, rumors had been flying that a major criminal organization had moved back into the abandoned sections of this mountain to fund their activities. Federal agents had been tracking suspicious shipments of industrial mining equipment into the region for months. When they finally breached the main tunnel, they were stunned by the scale of what was happening. This is a key detail, because it shows the cartel wasn't just moving products. They were building an industrial empire. The crazy part is how they managed to hide thousands of workers and heavy machinery in a mountain that is basically a collapsing honeycomb. Federal sources say the agents had to use specialized drones to map out the tunnels before they could even send people inside. Nobody expected this to happen on such a grand scale, but the evidence was sitting right there in the dark. As agents moved deeper, they found that the cartel had tapped into veins of silver that were thought to be tapped out centuries ago. The raid was dangerous because the mountain is riddled with tens of thousands of old shafts and adits that make the ground incredibly unstable. It is not that simple, though, to just walk in and take the silver. The federal teams had to bring in structural engineers just to make sure the tunnels wouldn't cave in on them during the evidence collection. Hands down, this is the largest seizure of precious metals in the history of the DEA. They found high-tech labs where the ore was being purified using methods that the world has not seen in a long time. Basically, the cartel was running a shadow government, financed by the very mountain that once powered the Spanish Empire. The raid took days to complete because the tunnels go down for miles. Every turn revealed another room filled with ore or processing chemicals. Experts say that at today's prices, the silver found in this one operation could destabilize global markets if it were all released at once. Yeah, about that. The feds are now trying to figure out how much of this silver has already made its way into the legitimate world economy. It turns out this one mountain has bled so much silver into history that it shaped entire civilizations. And now it is doing it again for the wrong people. Deep inside the dark tunnels of the mountain lies a story written in fire and liquid metal. Hot magma built silver empire. The story of this $47 billion discovery actually started 13,800,000 years ago. Back then, in the middle of the Miocene epoch, a huge mass of hot, sticky magma started moving up through the Earth's crust. This wasn't the kind of lava that flows like a river. It was deceit, which is thick and piles up into a massive volcanic blister. Instead of exploding into the sky, it stayed underground and inflated like a giant balloon made of rock. As it grew, it cracked everything around it and created a network of broken volcanic debris. This fracturing was the crucial accident that made the cartel's secret operation possible today. The broken rock acted like a natural plumbing system that was later filled with superheated fluids. These fluids were loaded with dissolved metals, like silver, tin, and zinc. As they moved up through the cracks and cooled down, they left behind thick veins of treasure. What most people don't realize is that this mountain is different from almost any other silver deposit in the world. The volcanic dome kept shifting and cracking over and over for at least 200,000 years. Every time it cracked, more metal-rich fluid rushed in to fill the gaps. It was like a natural factory that never stopped working. This created a mountain that is literally stuffed with silver from top to bottom. The cartel knew this, and they used modern geological surveys to find the spots where the silver was most concentrated. The crazy part is that they were mining in the cooler outer zones where the best silver is found, while the deeper parts of the mountain still hold massive amounts of tin and tungsten. Agents found that the cartel had identified at least 2 billion ounces of silver still sitting in the rock. To put that in perspective, that is more metal than most countries produce in a decade. The mountain itself rises to over 13,000 feet, and the cartel had tunnels running through almost every foot of it. It's not that simple though, because the rock is so broken up that it acts like a sponge. Water and air have been moving through those cracks for millions of years, changing the minerals and making them easier to extract. This natural process is called supergene oxidation. It basically did half the work for the cartel by breaking down the tough rock and leaving the silver behind. The federal raid uncovered maps that showed the cartel was targeting these specific areas to maximize their profits. They weren't just guessing. They had scientists on their payroll who understood the hydrothermal systems of the Andes. And that's putting it lightly. The technical skill involved in this operation was almost as impressive as the amount of money they were making. Centuries of mining have turned the mountain into a dangerous labyrinth filled with toxic secrets. Poison clouds guard silver stash. As the FBI moved into the processing area, they hit a wall of toxic fumes that nearly stopped the mission. The cartel was using a technique that was first invented in the 1500s, but they had updated it with modern equipment. They were crushing the ore and mixing it with mercury and salt to pull the silver out. This is known as the patio process, and it is hands down one of the most dangerous ways to handle metal. Mercury bonds with silver to form a paste, and then you have to heat that paste to burn the mercury away. The crazy part is that the cartel didn't care about the environmental damage or the health of their workers. They were releasing mercury vapor directly into the tunnels and the local water supply. Federal agents found barrels of mercury that were being used on a massive scale. This is a key detail because mercury is highly regulated, and tracking where it came from might lead to the people who were helping the cartel. The mountain already has a brutal history with this kind of work. Back in the colonial days, the Spanish crown used a forced labor system called the mita. Thousands of people perishing in those tunnels from exhaustion and poison. It seems the cartel was simply continuing that dark tradition. They had workers living underground in terrible conditions, breathing in dust and chemical fumes every single day. The mountain is so hollowed out now that it is often called a honeycomb. There are over 90,000 adits and shafts crisscrossing the rock. This makes it incredibly easy for people to hide, but also incredibly easy for the ground to collapse. Engineers at the scene warned that the entire peak is at risk of a catastrophic cave-in. Despite the danger, the cartel kept pushing their workers deeper into the unstable zones. They were hauling out 66,138 U.S. tons of ore every year. The scale of the operation was so big that they had their own internal power grid and ventilation systems hidden from satellite view. Yeah, about that. They even had a secret elevator system that could drop workers thousands of feet into the lower levels in seconds. Basically, it was a high-tech version of the medieval mines that first made this mountain famous. The feds found evidence that the silver was being cast into bars right there in the tunnels to make it easier to smuggle. The silver found in this mine was destined to travel across the globe and change markets. Hidden treasure bends global markets. The impact of this $47 billion cache goes far beyond the staggering financial value of the ore itself. It represents a seismic shift in our understanding of the global shadow economy. Historically, the silver torn from the red earth of Cerro Rico was the very lifeblood of the Spanish Empire, the fuel that launched the Armada and underwrote centuries of European wars. This mountain did not just make men rich, it birthed the first true global currency, the Piece of Eight, and connected markets from Seville to Beijing, where it was eagerly exchanged for tea, porcelain, and silk. Today, however, we are witnessing a terrifying historical echo. The cartel was not merely stealing resources, they were resurrecting an imperial business model, leveraging the raw mineral wealth of the Andes to purchase influence, silence, and advanced weaponry across every continent. This is a crucial detail that cannot be overstated, because it demonstrates how a single, remote geographical point can still radiate shockwaves that destabilize the entire planet. When the FBI finally cracked the encrypted ledgers found deep within the reinforced command bunkers, the scope of the operation became terrifyingly clear. These were not simple sales records, they were geopolitical maneuvering documents. The silver was being traded directly for high-end surveillance technology, drone components, and military-grade hardware that usually requires state-level clearance to acquire. It turns out that this mountain, often dismissed by geologists and historians as a depleted relic of the colonial era, remains a cornerstone of the global economy, even if that economy is now operating entirely in the black. The truly baffling aspect of this discovery is that nobody realized just how much high-grade silver was still left in the hill. For decades, the consensus was that Cerro Rico was tapped out, a hollowed-out honeycomb on the verge of collapse, offering only scraps to subsistence miners. Yet, the cartel's secret shafts, drilled with precision equipment that bypassed the exhausted colonial veins, prove that there is still a massive fortune waiting in the dark, effectively refilling the war chests of organized crime. What most people fail to realize is the extent to which our modern world is built on the historical infrastructure of this one peak. Global trade routes were literally bent around this mountain centuries ago, carved out by galleons and mule trains, and the cartel was shrewd enough to utilize those same ancient arteries to move their product today. They exploited the very history of the region, using the noise of legitimate small-scale mining as a mask for an industrial-scale extraction operation that rivaled the output of major sovereign nations. However, stopping the flow of this silver is infinitely more complex than simply seizing a stockpile. Once the metal leaves the mountain, it enters a nebulous phase of laundering that defies easy detection. Silver is elemental, it has no serial number. The metal moves through so many hands, is melted down, realloyed, and stamped with new hallmarks so quickly that it becomes virtually impossible to track its origin once it enters the international bullion market. Federal agents are now engaged in a forensic accounting nightmare, working in tandem with international banks to trace the spiderweb of shell companies and offshore accounts where the money eventually landed. They suspect that this $47 billion is just the tip of the iceberg, a fraction of the true wealth that has been siphoned out of the Andes over the last decade. Darker rumors are beginning to circulate in intelligence communities about other secret mines, dormant sites hidden in the remote altitudes of the mountain range that might be part of the same synchronized network. Hands down, this raid has opened a door into a world of crime that is much bigger, more sophisticated, and more entrenched than anyone in law enforcement had imagined. The mountain stands as a paradoxical symbol of both incredible wealth and incredible suffering. A man-eater that has consumed millions of lives over 5 centuries, yet continues to mesmerize the greedy. As we look at the battered, sinking slopes of Cerro Rico today, we have to wonder what other secrets are hiding beneath the surface, waiting to fund the next global conflict. The thing is, This story isn't over just because the feds found one stash. The world is just now beginning to understand the true cost of the silver buried in the mountain. If criminal groups can hide $47 billion in a single mountain, what else is buried right under our feet? Tell us what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe.